Welcome to the Communication Queens podcast for the visionary leaders, speakers, service providers, and podcasters who are looking to stand out sharing their story. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, former screenwriter turned master communications coach. On this podcast, I'll be coaching you on how to share your own transformation story so that you increase your visibility, influence, and income on podcast interviews. Let's get your voice heard. Hello, Communication Queens, and welcome back. Today, we are diving into a little phrase that will be a game changer when you are on podcast interviews. This little phrase that you can use is a phrase that will convert a little bit of oxytocin in the listeners of your audience. And like I said, who doesn't love a little oxytocin? It will convert short-term learning into long-term learning. And what is it? Well, it's the thing that I drill home in for every single one of our Communication Queens clients is that storytelling is how we have communicated and how we have connected since the dawn of time, since Homo sapiens sapiens became Homo sapiens sapiens and started doing cave painting and telling stories around campfires. What this is that this little phrase is all about storytelling. What do I mean? So when you're in a podcast and you're about to deliver your best strategies, your best tips, your tips and tricks, the thing that you are just known for doing, you know, when I go on podcasts and talk about subconscious story transformation, I start with this, my own story. And I simply say the words, can I tell you a story? Yes, this little phrase, I learned this from the president of Singularity University. It is this simple phrase, can I tell you a story? It increases your rate of memory retention because we are going to remember far more the stories that we are told than the strategies we are given and yet have not implemented. Especially if you haven't yet implemented a strategy, you remember what you experience. We experience human stories, and thus we experience our own story through listening to other human stories. So Kyle, the president of Singularity University, literally said in his talk at the A360 Mastermind is the answer to most things is just telling stories. When you are an expert communicator, you are able to share your story in a way that demonstrates your strategies. So thus you are the example of the practicing what you preach rather than just preaching. When we're at school, we're learning the what. Here's what you need to learn. Memorize this. Here's what you need to learn. Here's what you need to remember. How much of that do you actually remember? But oh my gosh, can I tell you the stories of the Latin professor in my high school? Well, he didn't teach Latin at the high school. He just spoke Latin, which I thought was super cool. And I remember his lessons because he told stories, because he leveraged that power of story. When you remember those experiences in your childhood, I bet it's in the form of story. It's not in the form of what you learned. So when you are on a podcast interview, when you are giving a talk, using the simple phrase, can I tell you a story? It gets the audience's permission because naturally, of course, you're on the interview. They're going to say yes. And when you share your experiences as a demonstration, that is you then becoming the testimony for possibility of the strategies that you say works, that you teach that works, of them actually working out for you, and thus they will be more highly remembered by those that listen to your podcast interview. So I hope you love this Communication Queen Quickie. Continue to share your story because your story has the power to save one life. It has the power to serve. And yes, for your business, it has the power to sell. Thank you so much for listening. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. For more tips on guest podcasting, storytelling, and communication strategies, follow us on social media at Communication Queens Agency and visit us at communicationqueens.com. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And in the meantime, remember, your story has the power to save one life. Let your story and your voice be heard.